Mm.
Welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It is December 17th. Mr. Co-Chair, we have you and myself. Online, we have Treasurer Meyer and Representative Sherwood. For right now, the treasurer will have to pop in and out throughout the day, but we appreciate you being here first. Welcome to DeFi. I think we've had a few shorter meetings, and this is a meeting where we have a lot longer agenda, so we'll try to be going through it pretty quickly. So with that, and do you have any further commentary?
Madam Chairman, just a couple of things. First of all, it's my sister's birthday, so happy birthday to her.
And I'm sure she's watching.
You know what? I wanted to congratulate Amy, one of our stellar committee members. She pulled off the Wyoming breakfast down at the National Finals Rodeo and hit it out of the park. It's an event that is looked forward to by a lot of people. It has grown to be, how many did you have? 400, I bet, 300?
It's over 400 probably.
Spectacular. And I tell you what, you go away from that Wyoming breakfast feeling amazingly lucky to live in this beautiful state of Wyoming. So congratulations, Amy. I just wanted to do that publicly. And it's great to see everybody. This is actually the final meeting, except for I think we have a water select committee meeting next couple of days. But this is like the last meeting of the 67th legislature, or at least those of us who represent that body. So anyway, let's get started. We got a full agenda. Welcome back, DI.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We will dive in. Yeah, thank you for having us. The Capitol looks beautiful. Christmas trees up, everything's bright, and the wind is a little nippy, but
not as sunny as we'd like it
not
to
as
be
sunny, yeah, but beautiful day in Cheyenne today.
Yeah, the other day we had those children in there singing Christmas carols on that tree. Wow, that was, you can imagine the sound, and it was really cool.
And on Sunday, the wind topped out at 81 miles an hour between here and Casper. So
nothing. Oh, because of the light breeze. Okay.
Yeah.
Good day for an exterior set.
Yeah, you guys want to go? So we do have a full agenda today. This is going to be a summary of a lot of work that's happened the last couple of years with this committee, and want to get everybody up to speed on where things are as we close out the year, close out the session, and keep moving forward with finalizing everything. So we'll talk signage and wayfinding, we'll talk static exhibits, we'll talk digital exhibits, and we're going to talk the civics lab. So a lot of things that we're going to go through today. First, we're going to kick it off with signage and wayfinding updates. You've seen a lot of progress throughout the Capitol and through Hirschler. I'm going to hand it over to Ashley to walk us through the latest updates.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm not there with you. I'd love to see some of the decor, so I'm going to have to make a trip soon. But update on signage and wayfinding. If you guys have not made your way over to the Hirschler lobbies, please do, because these graphics that have gone up are absolutely gorgeous, and you guys will see some FCOs in the bronze color and then directional signage. So we are installing 7 of these today, so a majority of these walls will be complete. So take a little tour. Also, along the signage and wayfinding, we are installing flag signs and wall signs this week as well. So a lot of progress to try to get us to the finish line. And then we are actively working with your guys' core team on punch walks and making sure that we deliver the highest quality and that everybody is happy with how we hand things over to you guys. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Rachel. Thank you. For our static exhibits, couple photos here. I did label the 2 on the right-hand side. So PMR 1 through 6, the half wall panels that you guys have been reviewing and working so hard on, all of the information on these destinations that you guys can see and the public can see and tourists can see are all up in those rooms. So take a little tour in there and read those panels, as well as Best of Wyoming and a couple other panels throughout. So some really great stuff going up. I did want to focus on the conference room graphics and say thank you guys for that quick review and the change from a full color to a halftone. I think those are going to look really great, and those should be going up here in the next week before the end of the year, as well as the Capitol Auditorium images. So all of our photographers that Patrick sent our way of the wildlife photography, everybody has been extremely excited for this project. And similar to the PMRs, we've had some photographers donate their photography just for the pure fact that it's going to be enjoyed by so many in the Capitol. So you guys will start seeing those up as well. There's templates in that auditorium right now if you care to walk over there and just see how the room's going to be laid out.
Ashley. As we move forward, we also wanted to take a moment to talk about consistent terminology. So there's been a lot of work that went into what we were going to call everything. And we want to make sure that that gets reiterated, kind of a change management approach, making sure that we're reiterating what those terminology, what those things are called. So I think one of the bigger obvious ones is the capital extension versus connection. So we want to make sure that everybody in this room is reiterating that to other agencies and other partners on best practices to make sure that we are all calling it the same thing, so that a guest or a visitor that's coming may see signage that directs them to the Capitol extension, and we don't say Capitol connection or any of the other rooms as we move forward. There will be a user manual that will come out, and the docents will be great at all of this, but just a reminder, best practices that we want to make sure that we stay consistent with the naming and terminology that we've used and that's going up in all of the signage and wayfinding. That's my lecture for the day. There are some static exhibits that are still in progress if we're good to keep moving forward. Okay.
Should we ask her any
questions? Should we pause on that? Yeah,
we're gonna pivot.
I'm not, Madam Chairman, I'm not hearing. Did you hear that?
We just want to make sure that everybody's using consistent terminology. And so would look to the two co-chairs to ensure that that is something that is common throughout the committee, leading by example, kind of change management 101. So if you hear somebody call it the Capitol connection, that's my biggest example today. There are others as well, but that you can help kindly remind people that it's actually the extension.
I apologize. I heard that part, and then I thought somebody asked a question. I was busy trying to get my slide deck up on my computer, so I apologize.
Yeah, and I don't hear that as either, but I do think that probably LSO and the agencies that live in the actual Capitol are a lot more likely to hear that. Yeah, it's terminology.
Yeah, you know, I think if we don't have an official document of some kind or whatever at this point, I do think it would behoove us as a subcommittee to maybe produce something that could be reflected by the co-chairman. We could put out, you know, maybe a message to everyone, because I agree with DI. We've worked so hard and spent so much time on this that we want to get people acclimated right away to referring to the right parts of the building and the right meeting rooms, and so that makes a lot of sense. And maybe we could draft a little something that could go out to everyone, especially we're gaveling in a legislative session here about the 14th of January. So there will be a lot of folks around, and we might as well get the word out.
What are some of the other top misuses that you hear? Like, knowing that the extension is probably the most common, are there others that?
I think, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I think changing the Student Learning Center to Capitol Classroom, you know, that the Visitor Center to Civics Lab. We internally have updated our maps and some naming convention from the legislative side. So those are two examples that I can think of that people are not necessarily familiar with the blessing of the new names and using those.
So Brianna, that's well put. And I think a couple of things that come to my mind, in the next couple of months, room 110 and 113 will be used quite a bit. And if they are referenced by the names that we have given them, people aren't going to understand where they're going. So I think that's the kind of thing that we may want to say, by the way, rooms 110 and 113 have names now that correspond with the numbers. You can always refer to the numbers, but if you hear a name that's associated, 52 and 53 are the same, you know, down here in those conference rooms. They get used quite a bit. I'm excited for people to see those. I think they're going to be really terrific. But they may also be referred to as the Cottonwood Room, and people might not understand what we're talking about. Does that make sense? I think those would be my concerns, Madam Chairman.
Well, and just being realistic, we've been using those numbers for 5 years, so it's probably not going to turn on a dime.
Yes,
So-
yes, yeah. Kind of a constant drumbeat of.
Slow pivot.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, I actually think it'll be both. I think it'll, you know, to kind of reinforce 52 is the Cottonwood Room. Because I think there's people that have preference for numbers. That's why we have both numbers, and all your wayfinding signage actually has only the room numbers themselves. So it'll be important not to lose the numbers either.
I think what may happen, Wendy, that's a good point too. I think what may happen as chairman like myself stand up to announce a meeting, for example, we may very well say we'll be meeting down in the Capitol Extension room 5 in the North Platte room, just to start acclimating people to the fact that there is a name on the door, but it's also room 5. And pretty soon, I think if we just stick to it, I think it'll come around pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it until, you know, now, but that's very important.
I feel we might have chairman fighting over room. So hopefully we just don't have 2 chairmen from the same base.
Yeah. Well, we may have to change. If I'm meeting in the wrong room, we'll have to put North Platte on one of the other rooms, but we can scrape that. We can scrape it off if we do that.
There's any territorial arguments there?
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I have to throw out real quickly, Madam Chairman. I know we got a long ways to go, but so at the meeting the other day, thank you to Representative Sherwood for not being too tough on us at the Appropriations Committee meeting last week. But I thought there was an interesting point made by one of the senators asking whether or not they could get a duplicate image from one of the photographs, which I thought was really terrific and outstanding, because it points to the fact that the DI and our Game and Fish folks and all of our photographers out across the land have done a great job of picking out some images that people are going, oh, wow, how can I get that? So that's a heads up to some of our photographers out there that, there may be some folks wanting to visit with them about that. So I thought that was really, really pretty cool.
Wonderful. It's wonderful. Okay. We do have a few static exhibits that we're still working through. So I wanted to walk you through where we are with the niches and vitrines. Nigel?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Nice to see all your tiny little bodies on my screen here. Let's walk through the niches and vitrines, and this is a lot of stuff that we've seen a few times. We've nailed down the specifics of the different artifacts that we're going to show, so we wanted to show you those and some of the refinements we've made to the design of these spaces. Almost all of them are downstairs and on the garden level. So let's start by looking at the 2 architectural vitrines, which are on the west in the west hallway, just on the garden level as well. There are 2 existing spaces that we are repurposing. So we're in the process of developing how that happens. And if we walk through these next few slides, you'll start to see how they've been configured. You've seen these before. go to the next slide and we can show you the specific items that we've designated as artifacts. This is the construction side of the architectural niches. The top two things are the labels are swapped, but we've got the plumb bob, the broad axe, the original an original nail, some planes that came out of this wonderful toolbox that is on display in the Wyoming Museum, and then some auger bits as well. This piece of actual sandstone from the quarry where the sandstone for the building was actually sourced, and then a quarry hook from that same quarry that was used to move these huge weighty pieces of stone. So that's where we've landed with the artifacts. Thank you very much to Nate and the rest of the core team in developing this collection. If we look at the next one, we can focus on the restoration vitrine, and the items that we have in there is that the decorative element that's up from near the top near the dome area, the actual gold cladding from the dome, a baluster that's used in a number of different places on the facade, a corbel used at the transition from the second floor to the roof, and then some decorative sandstone pieces that are used throughout the building. But we've focused on a couple of these elements, and Nathan actually has them in his office right now. If you want to see the actual things, they're awesome. So those are arranged on there, and the design to hang on that wall so that they align pretty closely with where they might be on the building, which is shown as a cropped out image on the left side of the vitrine. Any questions about the architectural queens and where vitrines and where we've settled on those artifacts?
No.
All right. Let's move to the caretakers. So right across the hall from these vitrines is that little hallway that shoots off next to what will be the timeline interactive. And there's this little niche in that little hallway that we're using to highlight the caretaker. As many of you already know, if we look at the next page, we've started to narrow down what those artifacts are, but also we wanted to demonstrate there's going to be a half wall panel right adjacent to it because it's a fairly rich story, and we want to make sure we cover some more of the details of those. Those are in the process of being reviewed currently, but this gives you a sense of how rich the story is in that small space. If you go to the next page, we'll get a little more detail on the actual artifacts. We've got a page from a journal scrapbook that will actually replicate. It won't be the real thing. We want to replicate it just to preserve the original piece in a proper environment. And then a broken plate that was found during one of the remodeling reconstruction processes that we will display sort of as if it's been put together. We're using little acrylic pedestals, clear acrylic pedestals behind it to stand it at an angle so people can see the plate together but see that it's broken, if that makes any kind of sense. If you go to the next page, you can see how those are configured. And I don't know if you see it on this. We passed by, and that's my fault. We found some great images of quilts that were from I believe the caretaker or caretaker's family that they created, and we're using one of those as a background watermark pattern in the backdrop of the half wall panel that goes next to it. It's hard to read from these images. We're waiting for a better quality flat image of the quilt, but that'll add another layer of interest to those elements. I think that's it for the caretaker. Any questions about those elements? Oh no, hold on. There's another panel. Let's go to the next page. That image at the top right corner inside the niche will be another cutaway from from the scrapbook type of thing. Then we've taken this medallion, which we'd hoped originally to display in the case, but it's less than an inch in diameter, so it wouldn't have worked effectively. So we're going to create a larger than scale replica of those coins and place them as a layer on top of this graphic that's on that panel up at the top right. So you'll see the front and the back of that panel at a slightly larger scale, so it's a little more legible. So that's all the content for the caretaker's niche area. Any questions?
So Nigel, those coins, will they be actual coin, an actual coin then that is replicated to be bigger than the originals?
It won't be a coin in that it's embossed and metallic. We'll use a different substrate, but we will decorate it in a faux manner so that it resembles the coin.
Sounds great.
And it will have depth, so the returns will be painted as well. So they will sit on that back panel and float above it, so that you can appreciate the coin large enough so you can actually see the detail.
Oh, that's terrific. Good.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, next is the stage vault, which is right in the center of the garden level, where we've taken one of those 6, 7 vaults, and we'll be displaying a number of different artifacts or replicas of artifacts that we've learned were typically kept in these types of vaults. So if we go to the next page, it'll start by this sort of low gate wall, acrylic wall with a reader rail on the top, and the design of this is still in refinement. So, but this is essentially the quality of the content that will be there. They'll explain what it is they're looking at within the vault. And then if we go to the next slide, we can see what that stage vault case looks like. And it's built from a design of a similar vault that we have images of, thanks to Kaylee. So we're replicating that design in this one to display these items. This is also still in the process as well. We want to make sure we add lighting into this as well. And there's been some conversation about maybe we extend the scale of this so it has wings and it feels like the whole room has these shelving units instead of just one shelving unit towards the back. So that's in development, but we do know that these are the artifacts that we want to display. So if we look at the next page, we can look at those artifacts. And we're going to change the order of these as well. So we'll start on the top shelf with a territorial focus, where we have a ledger and daybook and a state seal. And then we transition from territory state focus with a book of checks and a silver tray. And then the third shelf at the bottom, second from the bottom, will be all focused on the state with some ledgers, a territory of Wyoming check, and a state seal. Or it's a state check. I need to confirm that. And then on the final layer, focusing on survey and land survey and resources, where we have this fabulous piece of jade, some faux gold bars to get the kids excited, and this Alice Dade on top of its well-traveled case, displaying that piece of I don't know what you use the Alidate for. Nathan, are you there? Can you remind us what that was used?
Device or pointers for determining directions or measuring angles used in surveying and astronomy.
Brilliant. All right.
It's a piece of surveyor's equipment. You can kind of do the surveying, and on that table you can make a map at the same time. They're really cool. It's called an Alidade.
Alidade. It's fabulous.
Madam Chairman, I would just add that that was found in one of the vaults in the garden level, and we believe was used by Elwood Mead. So it's got some Elwood Mead. So has some great provenance behind it.
That's cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. So those are the items that will be in that stage vault. Any questions about that?
You're nailing it.
Okay, sweet. All right. Their checks were much prettier back then, just a note.
And we're also not gonna have the party decor, just to be clear.
We are shooting to have that carpet on the that fabulous bowling alley carpet on the base of each of those, so you can't miss that. All right. Okay. Next, if we go now onto the East Wing, where we have the governor's niche, there's that one niche in that little card with all those historic governor portraits that we're going to take advantage of. And this is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the governors, but also to focus attention on the governor's mansion, historic governor's mansion. So if we look at the next page, we can start to see how that will be used. Those FCOs up above, the large graphic panel with that gold transition bar, and then a large vitrine with pedestals that will accommodate a series of different items as this display changes over time and is replenished with different items, all from the governor's mansion. And Nathan's been working with the good folks there to coordinate how that might look over time. Right now, we have this urn with the spoons, and the spoon is one of the spoons is displayed separately, so you can see the detail of that. If we go to the next page, I think it shows you a little more detail. It shows you a photo of that sugar bowl and spoons. They took their sugar bowl seriously back then. And I think we're also waiting for maybe a better shot of the mansion, although that we may have that in there now. I can't tell from this small image, but that's coming along wonderfully, and I like the fact that it's going to be easily changed out. We are also working internally to figure out the best solution for lighting of all these niches and vitrines. I think that's all our niches. Some more detail on that. And there's actually like pages and pages of more detail on these things. But I didn't want to inundate you with them all. That's the artifact label that will live inside the vitrine.
We said this earlier, but I'll say it again for the sake of the committee, is that these have been ideas for a long time. They have gone a tremendous way in the last month or so with it, because of a great collaboration between the core team. Nathan has been instrumental in finding all these artifacts, our content team and our design team. We had loose sketches of ideas of this before we really engaged and really started to focus on this. And in the last month, this has gone into the light year category, and going from an idea to something that is very, very, solid, telling a great story. We feel confident about the artifacts. So I take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody. This has been fun for the last month or so.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
And Nathan's probably running out of room at his desk, so.
Storeroom.
He is always ready. It's at every call. We talk about something, he goes, wait.
Yeah, he's like, I have
He lifts it off the ground.
It's been a lot of fun for him.
There's still lunch. I can run it at lunch.
Madam Chairman, just to jump in real quickly, and for DI's edification, we did meet with our appropriations committee last week, and I don't say it lightly, everyone. I'm looking at everyone on this subcommittee. We came away from that meeting having expressed our appreciation to all of you, but also we came away with amazing recollection of all the hours and all the effort from our consultants and from every one of you. So thank you, Nathan. Thanks to everyone who has contributed along the way. It really has been a team effort. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Nigel. The
Absolutely.
we wanted to talk about in terms of static exhibits is experience optimization. So as you look at the process and all the work that goes into it, there's been so much strategy and great ideas and how we're going to execute it. And it never, I mean, it never fails. Once you get into the space, there's usually at least one thing that you thought, oh man, this thing isn't quite being used how I thought it was going to be used. It's just a little bit different. So that is perfectly normal in this type of a project. So now that things are getting up, a lot more people are in the Capitol right now. So you can really see how people are going to use the exhibits, how they're going to interact with all the interpretive work and signage and wayfinding. So this is the stage that we really call experience optimization. So we may end up making some minor changes. The core team's really been looking at how guests and visitors are using the space, how it feels as you get more and more people in here. So trying to see if our best made plans and hypotheses are working or where they can continue to be optimized. So there may be little tweaks that happen as we move forward, and that's perfectly normal.
And that's part of the DI way. It's part of our standard process is that optimization phase.
Yep, absolutely.
Madam Chair, I might just go through that in a little bit more detail. And for those of you who've been in Suffrage Hall, you've seen with the 4 panels plus the freestanding wayfinding and the superintendent's panel right there. There's a lot going on in that corridor. And Nathan and DI have walked that. And we think where the treasurers and superintendent's panel is, that's kind of a major corridor right there. But we think there's a way to kind of put them just offset of those doors where you would still see the flag signs and kind of clear that path up. And then we think the architectural panel in Suffrage Hall could be moved down into the garden level where all of these architectural niches are and the caretaker's niche. And that could kind of become known as Architectural Hall. And then the docents, when they're people are coming in and if they say, oh, you've only got a little bit of time, are you more interested in building architecture? Start your tour down here in the garden level. Oh, are you interested in our suffrage story? Start up here on the west level. There's only currently 1 panel on the garden level west, and we think that could help free up a little bit of that first level space if we move that down.
Thank you, Wendy. That we do have a lot there. And it's a wonderful bunch of stories there, but yeah, my reaction was we've got 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag there. So I think that we can work on that. Kind of like any home project, right? You hang something and you think, well, that doesn't quite fit there. We'll have to move it. I think that's okay.
Okay, that was it for static exhibits. We are just breezing through here. Any questions before we dive into the digital exhibits? Very quiet group today. Rick is going to have to start telling jokes and Nick will start singing shortly. So we know signage and wayfinding and the static exhibits that really took priority, and we were really pushing to get as much of that possible done before this session. Digital exhibits have been working in the background as well. We gave some updates on that the last couple of months and wanted to just show you the latest progress for that. So you're going to see updates on content, design, and then we'll talk through really where we head from here, knowing that there's going to, we don't have a subcommittee meeting for the next couple months. We will continue to work through the plan on what we are doing for those digital exhibits in Civics Lab. So we'll finalize the design. There will be a lot of work on the UX, UI, user experience and user interface, as well as finalizing the engineering. And then we go into the make phase. So we fabricate, we're doing development of software, we're developing all the content. And then from there, we bring all that content together, bring all those things together, really do our integration and testing and entering all that content. And then we go into install and training. So these are the things that will be happening the next several months as we continue to work through the plan for all of the items that we are about to show you. We're first going to start with portraits of history. So we showed you guys some updates on this last month. We're just going to remind you of some of these things and then walk you through updates in terms of voiceover and scripts. Nigel, do you want to kick this part off? You're on mute.
I said no. No, I will, absolutely. The vault, which is directly opposite the governor's niche we just looked at. If you look at the next page, we'll help you remind you of what that space looks like. We ended up with the name Portraits of History for the vault itself. And then we're adding this half wall panel to the left of it, which explains a bit about what this vault is and why the door is down here. And encourages people to explore within the gallery around it, but also enter in within the Portraits of History experience to get that interest sparked. There's 3 framed images inside of that room, and each one of them is going to embody one different question from the history, a different story from the history of Wyoming, and we're categorizing them under different subject matters. So in this case, we have agriculture, tourism, and mining. And we've found with the help of Nathan again and others these fabulous paintings from the state archives or in state museums that serve as the entry point into these stories. It should be said that these stories can change and be added to over time. So currently we have these 3 stories, but as this space evolves over time, you will be able to, using the CMS, to add even more stories to this space. You'll walk in there, you'll see this, you'll see the 3 paintings, you'll find the one that interests you the most. There'll be a switch below the painting that allows you to prompt and start the story. And then I think I should hand it off to Chris and the rest of the team to sort of talk you through how that experience unfolds.
Nigel and Chris, Madam Chair, if I can just quickly interject, I want to give another credit for the tourism and mining artwork. Those have both been graciously provided, the digital images graciously provided by Wyoming Museums. And I just want to give them another kudos. The tourism image is a early 1900s painting, I believe, from the National Museum of Wildlife Art in Jackson. And the mining image painting is a 1949 painting from the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, from the Whitney Art Museum. So both very happy to be participating in this project and waiving all of their associated fees. So thank you.
We've seen this so many times. I didn't want to assume everybody understands that these are actually screens, right? Well, we'll be able to run video. I just want to make sure. I'm not sure if everybody remembers that, but
these are the idle state that'll be.
This is yeah. Although with some nuances of movement, so that it attracts attention to each one of them.
Perfect. So we've gone through imagery, and I know last time we showed you an update, we had 1 script, and we were working through revisions for that, and working through all the visuals and all the what you will see as you hear the script. So now we're working on who's going to read the script. Chris, if you want to walk us through the voiceover kind of process and what that looks like and who we should be listening to here.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So yeah, as Nigel was saying, we're going to have the 3 stories, and we are planning on using 1 single voice to narrate each one of those. We think in that small, intimate space, it's going to be best just to have 1 voice. And so, yeah, we're focusing on trying to find who that voice is actually going to be. So we did a nationwide casting. I think we received over 100 different auditions. So we combed through all of those, and we all seemed to gravitate towards one of them, a gentleman named Bill Carl. We think he has the strongest, most confident, really authentic voice for this. And so we are recommending that we proceed with him as the narrator for each one of these stories. We do have a backup. it is a female voice, a woman named Tiffany Samples. She did a great job in her audition, but we are really leaning towards Bill Carl as that voice. And I believe Rachel will play these down for you here in a moment. But what you're going to hear are just the auditions. And so they basically get the script and go into a studio and record that script with pretty minimal direction. And once we have approval and move forward, we will take them into a recording studio for a recording session, and we'll be able to coach them and direct them and really shape how that voiceover comes together. And so, for this one, we'll probably want a little bit more of a conversational tone. And so in that recording session, we'll be able to really shape how that works, and coach them into speaking how we want them to speak. And so, yeah, our recommendation again is Bill Carl. And yeah, Rachel, are you able to play these down?
Well, I made a rookie move and did not test the audio, so we're gonna do this live.
Oh, okay.
I can do this. So please forgive me if this does not work.
Okay. 1895, John Coble shot him.
Okay, so it's gonna echo pretty badly here. Yeah, did you guys hear an echo on your side?
No.
I don't think so.
That was me. Did you guys hear an echo?
No.
It's coming from your screen only.
Okay, so yeah, why don't you play it? Let's see if you can. Okay, so this first one is Bill.
Oh, Carl. In 1895, John Coble shot a bull right inside the opulent Cheyenne Club. The proud bovine survived and even lives on today, unbothered by the bullet hole that gives away his place in Wyoming history. Coble fired a few rounds after perhaps one too many rounds. He was agitated that the painting depicted European milking stock rather than the sturdy beef cattle of the American West. Perhaps his real discomfort came from the realization that times were changing, not in favor of Wyoming's cattle-owning elite. The Cheyenne Club, founded in 1880, had been their sanctuary.
So that's a partial script, but you get the tone of his voice.
I love it.
Everybody was smiling, so I hope that everybody's hearing also.
As Chris said, we did have a female voiceover as well. Would you guys like to hear that just for comparison? Okay.
Yeah.
In 1895, John Coble shot a bull right inside the opulent Cheyenne Club. The proud bovine survived and even lives on today, unbothered by the bullet hole that gives away his place in Wyoming history. Coble fired a few rounds after perhaps one too many rounds. He was agitated that the painting depicted European milking stock rather than the sturdy beef cattle of the American West. Perhaps his real discomfort came from the realization that times were changing and not in favor of Wyoming's cattle-owning elite. The Cheyenne Club, founded in 1880, had been their sanctuary.
I like Bill.
Scene. Yeah.
They're both good.
Yeah. Bill's got the voice, doesn't he?
No, I don't know.
Ray likes Bill too.
But me, I'm kind of with the co-chairman. I love both voices, really good, but the first one was. Anybody else?
This is one of the points where DI needs us to make an actual hard decision. So, Kurt, did you have any strong affinity or aversion? I think we're leaning towards Bill Carl, or could you hear it okay?
Yeah, I could hear it okay, but what do we know about Carl? Is he just a Wyoming guy or somebody else out there? I'm just wondering what his background is.
These are national. It was a national search, and he's a voice actor. I did go look up his website. He is out of Florida, but some of his past projects are John Deere, Wrangler,
Definitely has that.
Super much sport fishing TV.
That is not surprising.
So I feel like and he makes real good pulled pork.
Well, it's not bad. He's not the Marlboro man, but you know, what can you say?
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
And his address is. Let's all, you mind playing just, I don't know, maybe another 5 or 10 seconds of that, because we're going to walk you through 3 scripts. And so if we like Bill, I want you to keep Bill in your mind. I know we've had Chris read things. Chris is not the voiceover. So keep Bill in your mind. So if you want to play.
Chris has been demoted.
Chris has been demoted. He's okay with that.
So, yeah.
That's
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Scene. Okay.
John Coble shot a bull right inside the opulent Cheyenne Club. The proud bovine survived and even lives on today, unbothered by the bullet hole that gives away his place in Wyoming history.
Perfect. Okay, keep that in mind while Chris, whose voice hasn't been as hardened by life as Bill Collins has. He's gonna hear through the next.
You've been on 5 years at DI.
Yeah.
Right. Gotta smoke more.
We previously shared, there's been some updates. We'll continue to make minor tweaks, but Chris, if you want to go ahead and go through the agricultural script.
Sure. And you're going to see some audio suggestions here in the brackets. I'm going to skip through those and just read what the narrator is supposed to read. In 1895, John Coble shot a bull right inside the opulent Cheyenne Club. The painted bovine was an easy target, but lives on today, unbothered by the bullet hole that marks his place in Wyoming history. Coble fired a few rounds after perhaps one too many rounds. He was agitated that the painting depicted European milking stock rather than the sturdy beef cattle of the American West. Perhaps his real discomfort came from the realization that times were changing and not in favor of Wyoming's cattle-owning elite. The Cheyenne Club, founded in 1880, had been their sanctuary. But the days of limitless prosperity were over. The brutal winter of 1886 to 87 had culled both herds and fortunes. As their empires crumbled, the cattle barons lashed out. They blamed rustlers and decided for themselves who was guilty of the crime. Some homesteaders challenged their dominion over the open range and paid the price. Violence intensified until a private army of cattle owners and hired gunmen invaded Johnson County in 1892, intent on eliminating supposed thieves. The so-called rustlers fought back, and Wyoming's range war had begun in earnest. The cattlemen's invasion was thwarted, weakening their iron grip on Wyoming's destiny, but none were convicted of crimes. Their tactics went underground as they turned to gunslingers like Tom Horn to target their enemies, which only hastened their downfall. Horn's execution in 1903 marked the end of an era. The bullet holes in Potter's Bowl tell a much larger story of the battle for cattle across the vast Wyoming landscape. Today, that painting is part of the State Museum's permanent collection, a reminder of the conflict that forged our state's identity. Even the mighty cattle barons weren't above the law, but it took a decade for justice to catch up with them.
One of the things that you kind of left out of there is where we're at now in history is that still today, the Wyoming is considered an open range state, a fence out state. You know, so the cattle barons, you know, might have lost the war, but or some battles, but it's still open range, guys. I don't know if that's an important part or something to say, but you know, that's the sign of these times, and probably will be for quite some time.
A great note. Thank you.
Good point.
Thank you, committee, and I apologize. I know public comments are reserved later. I'm Richard Garrett, but since this is timely and a decision is about to be made, not to throw a curveball at you, but Governor Gordon loves to tell this story. I mean, anytime you go to his conference room as a guest, that's something that he really loves to tell. And I shared that story with some folks in Fairplay, And they wanted to meet the governor as a result of that story. So I'll add one more thing. When Denver International Airport opened up, the trains that run between the terminals, the voices that were telling you whether to get on or get off, and that sort of thing, were all celebrity voices from around Denver. At that time, folks that were in the news business, for example, television news business. So I don't know if it's appropriate for Governor Gordon's voice to be that which tells this story, but it's food for thought. So thank you very much.
Yeah, your input is always welcome. Richard, thank you for that and consideration that I hadn't thought of. Madam Chairman, I'm not sure where we go with that one, but I know the governor does love that story and he's from there.
I think that's a possibility. I think one concern is that we want to make sure, you know, knowing these will be updated occasionally, we don't want to have to update them frequently. But I think one option that maybe had been thrown out, and Wendy, correct me if I say this wrong, is perhaps some sort of welcome message from a current, from the current governor, or something similar that could be updated more, you know, to exactly to your point, like the trains that could maybe be updated more easily than the scripts, perhaps. But I think that's very good.
Ideally, these are fairly evergreen, that they will be a challenge to unpack and to rework if needed. So, but that's a great suggestion, I think, to have him do a little 30-second intro as you walk in, or something appropriate.
Be updated.
That's easier to update, because it lives by itself. Yeah. That'd be great. That way he could allude to this story and the other stories and then put a little bit of his spin on it and feel connected to this. So,
well, and I think that's part of the reason we don't say, you know, and go see this picture in the ceremonial conference room, because the next governor could say, get that thing out of here.
And Madam Chairman, to the point of the Governor Gordon's interest in this, he is actually, as Mr. Garrett said, he loves this story, and he has actually reviewed the script and has provided some really meaningful edits, being from Johnson County and knowing that part of Wyoming's history really well. So DI has received some of his feedback as well, and he's excited about this story being included in the experience.
Well, you know, just as a member of the committee, thank you for including the governor's thoughts. I can't say enough about the support he's given to all of this effort and to the subcommittee. So really thank you for that. It does have to have some entertainment to it, and you guys done a great job with these scripts, and so I'm sure you can, you know, blend the two hopefully and come out with a great product. But thank you for that, Wendy. I'm glad to hear that we've included the governor and Mr. Garrett. It sounds like we've sat down with him in the script, so that'll be good.
Yeah. As usual, you all are 10 steps ahead.
That's exactly where you were landing. So.
I thought you were just teeing us up. Okay, so we will move forward with the next script, which is around tourism. Chris?
Okay. Wyoming calls across the miles to those with adventure in their blood. Few embodied the spirit better than Billy Owen. In 1868, he arrived in Laramie with his mother and sisters, the new train giving them the chance to start a fresh life in this raw frontier town. Billy's mother opened a restaurant across from the makeshift canvas dance hall where gunfights would sometimes spill out into the street. Young Billy also witnessed the consequences. Frontier justice in action. Billy's childhood was as wild as the territory. He filled his days with pranks on unsuspecting adults, balanced with plenty of fishing and hunting in the windswept landscape that surrounded him. By the time he was a teenager, he stepped naturally into his lifelong career as a land surveyor. Helping map Wyoming gave him the perfect excuse to keep roaming the wilderness he loved. In 1883, Billy and two friends were the first to tour newly created Yellowstone Park a wheel, as he put it, on their perilous bone shaker bicycles. Word of Billy's epic adventure spread quickly, fueled by his natural gift for storytelling. In 1894, his reputation led voters to elect him state auditor. Never one to sit still, he climbed the Grand Teton with three friends in 1894, claiming to be the first to make the summit. Others later challenged his achievement, so at age 65, he climbed it again, then convinced the Wyoming legislature to officially recognize his claim. At last, his legacy of exploration was literally put on the map. The state legislature acknowledged Owen's claim, and the U.S. Board on Geographic Names officially designated the peak next to the Grand Mount Owen. Like countless adventurers drawn to Wyoming's wild places today, Billy Owen believed a great story can make the best souvenir.
So good.
Yeah, but not really like.
Adam,
How many times did you climb? 7.
So to weigh in, I just would remind that this is kind of our last opportunity to really make sure we're okay with where we're going here. So don't be afraid to weigh in, and don't let the two co-chairmen override if you feel strongly one way or the other. Really appreciated the treasurer weighing in on the previous one, and Representative Sherwood, are we on the right track here?
I have no changes. I am so happy. This is wonderful.
Good deal.
Yeah, I would just, I guess, weigh in. It's like while we're doing this process here, I'd like to maybe try to get the production of a couple of 3 more characters from Wyoming's history. That way, it doesn't get stale, So, and the other thing, as I'm thinking about that, I saw him putting up those block letters on the walls the other day. I'm just wondering what, as far as I guess I'm changing the subject, but I want to get this in before I've got to bounce to another meeting. That if we have vandalism or something like that, if somebody hits those with a spray can of paint, or they bust them off the wall, are we going to have a stockpile or readily available access to those so we can replace those things in those circumstances?
FCMs.
For FCM.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not sure which one specifically you're referring to, Mr. Treasurer, but maybe it's a good question in general.
Yeah, well, I know down in the basement coming in from the garage, I saw them sticking those up there, or maybe it was on 3rd floor in the center, sticking up the little block letters that come off the wall. They've got a bunch of 1/8 inch of they're little pins that stick out about 2.5 inches or so. They drill the holes and they just shove those blocks in there so they don't go anywhere. But somebody with a baseball bat or a spray can could vandalize those pretty quick. And I just wanted to make sure that in circumstances like that might not take place for a year or 20 years, but that we're going to have some access to them, so we essentially can replace those.
Madam Chair, as part of the conclusion of this project, and DI can speak more to this, you'll get what's called an O&M manual that'll have all of the colors, the materiality, suppliers. DI can supply those. There's different companies, so you can either go back to DI if things are needed, or you could go out and procure those separately. So that will all be part of the final deliverable from DI.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, and we have a service side of our organization that does nothing but those types of things. So I mean, for example, there's, we have AMC Theaters account that's just service, and we end up making just letters sometimes it's an I dot, sometimes it's an I, sometimes it's an A. It's very common for us to replace just those, you know, you might have an A fall, an A get broke off or vandalized, whatever.
A little note, the AMC bathroom signs are constantly stolen.
Yeah. And just thinking on the other ones there, you've got a lot of, like Sublette, Jim Bridger, Wild Bill, Cody, Bill Cody. There's a whole bunch of different frontier personalities that basically formed Wyoming and formed the West. That it would be nice to have, I guess, some idea if we could have some what it would cost now versus later as far as the production. And we may not have any money in the budget at all to do that, but there's a lot of Wyoming out there across the whole state. Not that this isn't a riveting story, but I think it's there's other optionalities that I'd like to see if we can explore at the budgets there. Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer.
Just from the opposite tourism marketing perspective, we really market Last Bastion of the West. And also we're really using the idea of an explorer more than adventurer. And a lot of that comes from, it distinguishes us from the other surrounding states. It came out of us not being distinguishable from Colorado, Utah, Montana, and a lot of people there go for adventure. And so I don't know if there's a way to use explorer or somehow, like really we still are the last bastion of the West. And it's how that's kind of what makes us unique on a tourism aspect.
Oh, that's great.
Great point.
Yeah.
Good notes. Okay, we'll move to the last script around mining.
Okay. Since the 1840s, little more than rumors had panned out for prospectors near South Pass, but people around here have never taken their dreams lightly. In 1867, Louis Robeson discovered 40 ounces of gold, and the rush was on. Within months, a collection of 50 houses and several mills, ambitiously named South Pass City, sprang up in the mountain gulches. The Carissa mine promised riches, drawing 2,000 fortune hunters to this frontier outpost. By 1872, the boom had faded, and only 100 residents remained. But another kind of mother lode had been discovered, the leadership of the area's strong, visionary women. South Pass City was the birthplace of women's suffrage. Resident Esther Hobart Morris became America's first female justice of the peace, while Janet Sherlock Smith built a business empire from her hotel to the Grecian Bend Saloon. For decades, the community persisted in its search for a huge payday. Over 10 years, the Carissa slowly offered up $1 million in gold to owner Bolivar Roberts. Then in 1896, Chicago investor John Spry joined seasoned mining man Barney Tibbles to modernize the Carissa. The mine took on new life and sparked new dreams. In 1929, the Carissa attracted Zoe Green with riches of another kind, the opportunity to direct a mine in an era when few women held such power. Today, the restored Carissa Mine and Mill produces a wealth of historical perspective. While gold mining here was short-lived, it enriched a legacy of resource development that would build the state. Recognizing the worth of all its people and the depth of their grit proved to be more valuable than gold.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Any thoughts on this script or request for Chris to do your outgoing voicemail?
I'm just wondering, 29, what was the other direction the mine took in that era, or is that just essentially the reference to Esther Hobart Morris? In
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman. This is Tom Ray from WYO History. in 1929, what actually happened was they moved a mill from Atlantic City to the Carissa mine and to replace the old mill with a newer one. And Zoe Green, there's a great photo of her, bossed the moving of that mill from Atlantic City over to South Pass City.
Okay, yeah, it just kind of hangs out there. It went in opportunity to direct the mine in an era, and it just what it just kind of hangs out there with no punchline. But
good note. Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Treasurer. I think I kind of get what you're saying. I think and I admittedly have limited knowledge of the Carissa mine, but when I hear this, I kind of said, wait, what? 1929. So
we can look at that section and then, yeah, absolutely. Good note.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of Representative Nichols right now. I feel like we've already covered the women's suffrage story a ton. And that we're really, like, the women's suffrage story is now kind of taking away the mining story. Okay. Like that, and now it's becoming more about, I don't know, like, I feel like we've already talked about Esther Hobart Morris. We've already got a statue of her. We've already talked about, and that this whole mining script has become more about women suffrage again, and not so much about mining. And it could just be me. I mean, I don't, those are my 2 cents. Like, I don't understand why women's suffrage is part of the mining script.
yeah, I guess it's Richards of another kind, I guess. And so, was she the CEO? Was she the mine owner? I guess, and yeah, it just seems like it needs a little bit more color in there. I'm not arguing about one way or the other. I just want it kind of fleshed out. So you guys think about it. If you think it's fine, I'm all right with it. I don't live and die on this, but it just seems like it needs a little bit more context, and maybe we don't have room for context. I don't know. Thank you.
This may be the only time I agree with the notion of the suffrage story kind of interjecting in a place that doesn't seem appropriate. And it could just be simply that the image, this amazing painting, doesn't lend itself to the viewer sort of knowing that what they're going to learn about or hear about is suffrage. And so I think there is a disconnect between the story and the image.
thanks for that, Representative. Yeah, and maybe I think I agree. And I think we chose South Pass City because it's so flippin' cool, but it was the mining story was sort of short there, but I mean, maybe directing more, how does that tie into how Wyoming became a mining state? You know, you have the iron ore that's right there as well. And, you know, maybe, I mean, said better than this, but like, even though the gold thing didn't work out, it turned out there was a whole bunch under the earth in Wyoming that was valuable. As opposed to focusing on suffrage here.
Yeah, I think those are very fair.
Like gold was a bust, but oh yeah, the other things.
Well, and the funny story is that they were just too far off for the gold. Like that they mined either above where the gold vein probably was or below it. And so there's actually some kind of cool how they kind of probably panned a little inaccurately for what could have been found.
Kind of in line with the chairwoman, I kind of think at the end, fleshing out more what that grew into, or maybe mentioning some of those other resources that this was the first thing, and there's iron ore, but then also now we have oil and gas was later, and coal, and but maybe mentioning some of that sentence or two at the very end that kind of shows this was the spark of something bigger.
But what about this, guys? After another kind, you'd say like executive leadership and the opportunity to direct a and I don't know whether it would be a refurbishing, an enlargement of the mine in an era where few women held such power and responsibility.
Tom, do you have any thoughts on the direction of this conversation? I want to make sure that we've got enough content. I'm assuming we do, enough stories that if we move away from suffrage, that suffrage connection, that we have enough story and content and fodder to make sure that we can still really make this a dynamic piece.
Yeah, one of the main reasons Zoe Green is in there is because she's because of the photo of her, which shows a woman in a broad-brimmed hat in blue jeans in about 1930 with the cuffs rolled up and a .45 automatic pistol in her belt. So clearly she's a person who likes to be in charge, and she bossed the moving of the mill from Atlantic City to South Pass City. And then as soon as that new mill was set up, there was no money to keep it running. It was 1930, the Depression hit, and it never really ran. So that mill that you tour now in South Pass City was never really operational for any length of time at all. So that's just a side note about Zoe Green. But since that time, as we all know, the U.S. Steel had a iron mine there near South Pass City that ran for, I think, 20 years, from the mid 60s to the mid 80s, and they took a lot of taconite out of there and railroaded it down to Utah, and so that's another thing. And those are South Pass City and that iron mine, the iron mining. I mean, those are there's never been a whole lot of hard rock mining in Wyoming, and you could talk about that fact. You could mention that these are a little bit of a higher, but so much of our economy depends on mining, of course, especially coal and on oil and gas. And you could, I think that's a good idea. Actually, you could mention that this was some of the earliest mining that went on in Wyoming, but mining's been a mining economy ever since it began, mostly coal, really.
Yeah, well, I just want to go on the record. I don't have any problems with all leaving Zoe Green in there. I think that's a heck of an accomplishment for anyone. I don't care if I'm fine with the expanding on the suffrage aspect of this. I mean, we touched on it politically, but this is I guess in an area that. I mean, you can do politics, but you can also be very successful. And these people, Zoe was evidently successful in an accomplishment. And so I'm fine with leaving it in. I just wanted to make sure that people knew what the accomplishment was. Maybe it is just the opportunity to direct a mine, but it seems I just thought a little bit of modification just made the sentence more descriptive about the accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. I think the story of Zoe Green is a story. The Carissa mine is, I mean, you can still tour the Carissa. It's phenomenal. I just think like the paragraph about the suffrage is just not right.
So as we move forward, we can increase the presence of where this started, early mining, and continue to grow, make sure that we're really hitting on the industry and its impact on Wyoming. And then we will look at that suffrage connection and how heavy we are at that, if everybody agrees.
More mining, less suffrage. Okay. Just on this.
Yep.
Say the first two are real close to being ready for prime time though.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great to hear. We've been having a lot of fun with this one, so I thought watching these stories come to life is a lot of fun. Okay. Wonderful. So as we move forward, we are looking at images for each of those little sections. As Chris has kind of walked through before, what we would be doing and how those visuals will come to life. We'll do the voiceover recording session with Bill. Chris will be there to direct. He will not be bitter, right, Chris? Be professional. And then we'll start to get to storyboards to animatic and be working with everybody on the core team to make sure that this is moving forward. We're really excited for the continued progress on this. Thank you guys all for your feedback. All great notes. Okay. Yeah.
If you need more information on South Pass City, their director of their park, I'm trying to find his name right now.
Joe Ellis.
Joe Ellis is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like the stories he can tell and share about Carissa, about the English Tunnel. He's the one that I had learned about how they misfound like the gold stuff, but he would be a great resource. I mean, he's someone that lives there, eats, breathes, lives South Pass City. If he could give you some of that mining.
That's great. Thank you for that.
I was like, what is that? I can see his face.
I think I found the photo.
Sure.
About.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to shoot that over to me.
Yeah, Joe put us in touch with a whole lot of images. He was very helpful.
Okay, moving forward to the Capitol kiosks. If everybody's comfortable with that.
Yep.
Okay. So as we look at the Capitol kiosk, remember you already have a couple of these already, and we're expanding these to additional areas. So this will let, it's a little bit of a digital wayfinding mechanism. So it lets visitors be able to find areas in the building, learn about their history, see where elected officials are. They'll be able to get information on meetings, locations, there's any alerts there. So really excited for all the different types of content that will be able to be shown to visitors as they come through here. Emilio, if you want to walk through the design and how we've continued to evolve and make progress.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yes, we have been evolving the design a little bit. We have focused on specific pieces of content here. We have a couple cute little additions here. The seek and find for kids to be able to go find little cute Easter eggs around the building. Biggest thing that you'll note here is that, and it might be this screen, for example, it has a label at the top that says Garden Level West. So one thing that we focus on is we're trying to bring the color that you, the things that you've gone through with package 2 and signing colors and panels and where things are around across the building. So we're trying to tie those together. So I think in the next page, you can start seeing the difference. So like the garden level on the east side, there are more orange panels closer to the kiosk. So then the kiosk has the same color, same west. We go through House and Senate are the 2 different sides in the next floor. So those are different colors, so on and so forth. So we're trying to tie the wayfinding, the kiosk to the physical wayfinding and panels that are across the building to bring it all together. So this is the south entrance, and then the extension are different again, but the content is the same. Everyone can find the same information no matter where they are, but using the color to keep pushing the location and wayfinding.
Mr. Chairman, Rachel brought up the term experience optimization earlier. This is a great example of that and our continued diligence within. You have seen layouts for digital activations, specifically in the Capitol kiosk before, but what we were doing is going back and doing our due diligence to make sure that all of this ties in together and that it makes sense. It works as the overall unit, etc. So not a whole lot of major changes here. This is some things that you've been seeing before, but as we move forward and as this moves from flat layouts into the more digital activation, we will start to look at this a little bit more and again, work with the core team to make sure that we're dotting all the I's appropriate and crossing all the T's appropriately as well. So we will, and then also I would add that like as we get, we've done digital experiences like this before. Once you start to see this on a screen actively working, you do tend to make different decisions than you might make, say, looking at it like on a screen like this. So as we get into that testing and that optimization, there will be another layer of this is where we just want to make sure that it all works right, it all feels right. And the great news is that it's because it's all digital, as long as it's not major architectural like scaffolding changes to this, we can make tweaks and changes as we go a lot easier than we can with bronze panels that are already hung on the wall. So we have a little bit more lenience with that.
We're continuing to work through the content. So if you remember when you look at the Explore Our History, those will be points of interest that really relate back to some of the exhibits and interpretive work that has already been done. So depending on which location you are in the building and which kiosk you're in, it will be able to connect that to the points of interest that are closest to you first. So if you're right next to the statues, you'll be able to see statues come up first, and then it'll have the other ones as well. But making sure that we're really utilizing the knowledge of where they are to show items that are the most interest of them. And then everybody's excited about the dome drone footage that we showed a while back. So the exploring the dome is also in progress as we work on final content. So final content's going to come through the core team for review and approval. And like I mentioned up front in the digital activations, we'll finalize all that content. We'll start to enter all that content. We'll test, develop, and get this baby going live before you know it. Any questions on the Capitol kiosk before we move forward? Wonderful. Okay, next is the Constitution kiosk. Emilio, if you want to walk through where we are with that.
We're in a similar scenario that's the Capitol kiosk. So reminder of where it is. It's in, there is, can you go to the next one? Yep. So here's, we're telling the story of the Constitution. Visitors can look at a replica, physical replica on the left side here, and then on the right side we'll have a digital screen that visitors can learn supporting stories about the Constitution. Then there'll be also a digital replica that you can flip through and of the original and of the current. And then there's stories that tie back to specific amendment articles and sections to supporting the story. Yeah, so there's historical ones, Article 1, Article 6, Article 8, 19. These all, we've looked at this before. These are the content that we're gonna be submitting to be developed, feature amendments, and then we are all bringing this together. So you read a story about the Missouri Plan in 1972, and then there'll be an article that ties back to it. So you can go and read that specific article or section in either the original or the current, depending on when it was written. So here's that section content, and then we also have this topic highlights where you can actually go read just about workers' rights, and then here are the articles and sections that deal with that. And then it's a good way to tie back to things that were written in the original, and then amendments that happen later, and we can flip back and forth between both. There's no need to go search, navigate through. So design wise, we are pretty, again, we're trying to tie this all together. So keeping the way we're keeping digital design with the lighter background and the darker text, but also bringing the orange of the color of the panel that's in the room. So trying to marry the two, bringing this all together. It's once you get past the menu, then you start seeing the orange header and then the footer. So it's closely related. Panels right there in the room with you, so you start feeling the connection. The layout is the same as the panel, very similar way to read it. So it's all coming together. Then this is how we would interact with the page, with the duplicate of the Constitution. So page numbers underneath, you can flip back and forth. There's a way to zoom in. This works the way both the current and the original replica that we're gonna have.
Continue to work on the content, get text templates formed and approved, and start to enter that content into the system. Any questions on the constitutional kiosk?
You know, just a sort of an elementary thought here. I think it's going to be terrific, and it's really going to be something people are going to want to see. By putting it behind the dais, or in between the dais and the guest table, is there any concern when tours are given, or are people going to be able to find this? I'm looking over toward Wendy. Rihanna would have some input on that. People know it's in there, because it's going to be tucked around behind. That was something I just thought of this morning. I think it's really the only place we could put it.
And there's not a lot of meetings in that room, so I mean the time percentage that it's available, I think, is very high. But
we do have some breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I was gonna say we do have a lot of signage to get there, but once you get to the room, I guess I see your point that you do have to sort of walk in.
Wendy, any thoughts on that? It's almost like you want to say, by the way, the Constitution kiosk is behind over there.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I think that Nathan and I actually walked this. Its original location between the rows of chairs impedes access to the room. When meetings are going on, it is located outside of the room, but we did walk it, and we thought that the panel itself may actually fit well behind this kiosk at a right angle. So you would see it when you walk into the room and know it's a panel, and then you would see this kiosk. And the only time then it would not be in the room is when a meeting's going on, so the kiosk would not be available either during that time. So I think that would pull people into the room just seeing the panel. If not, I'm sure we could probably do an acrylic placard that could sit on the testimony table or something to draw attention to it.
And that's a good point, Madam Chairman. I think when he points out, we can see how this goes. I think it'll be an attractive exhibit that people will find it, hopefully. And if they're struggling to, we can address it at that time. But yeah, I think it's going to be terrific.
Is there going to be any glare off of the screen? Just knowing that glare is an issue in that room to some extent. We've got the shutters now, which helps a lot. But for the folks sitting at the dais, looking at the screen basically the whole time, is there going to be any glare off the windows?
It is also at a little bit of an angle to help with that as well. I can't speak to the glass that we're using that would help with that glare issue.
It may not be an issue now that we have the shutters.
Yeah.
There's a reason we put the shutters.
And it should be able to be
And thank you
adjusted.
for that.
Yeah, it should be able to be adjusted to what makes sense with that.
Yeah. If glare does become an issue, we have some levers that we can pull to also solve that problem. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I have a quick question. Yeah. Can you remind me how it's going to be moved? Is it on wheels? And what is the weight? Can it be moved by one person, two people? I'm just not recalling. Thank you.
The panel that is going to be moved, the actual exhibit is a little bit more permanent than the panel. So the panel is what will be moved in and out of the room.
It is mobile though, not Not like a bag you can just carry around with you, but it's basically a what will be a heavy table, so it would take more than one person. But it's set to be moved as needed. I wouldn't recommend doing it on like a weekly basis, but if for some reason it felt like we need to have this out of here for the month of whatever, then that's not impossible. It's definitely doable, and that was part of our consideration in the development of how the power gets to it, which it comes from the witness table, the testimony table, whatever you call it. That's where the power is sourced. So there's no it doesn't go into the ground or into the floor there at all. It's just a piece of furniture that's plugged in the back, basically, and cosmetically hidden but plugged in.
Thank you for that reminder and correction. I appreciate it.
To Foundations of Progress. If you remember, that is the timeline. Nigel had referenced it when he was going through the garden level and talking through the niches and vitrines. It's a reminder of where it's at. Amelia?
Yeah, so this is an early render for reference, and then the new one is the next one. Great. So again, quick example of how we're trying to tie the panels with the digital. So the first color that you see on the digital is blue because the panel to the right of it is blue. I believe we're working on the panels in development. So content wise, we're still working through that, but story is still the same. Time of the capital, the history of Wyoming through the context of the capital and the evolution of the building. So I've this is really cool. The images in the background will move, so it'll look like the screen is alive, and you come up, touch it, then you get the timeline, and you start from 1880s and then move through. As you navigate through, this is another example of the optimization of design. The layouts, I think we've seen it all before. We worked through as we were looking at content and like how much room do you need for certain stories. We've been evolving the layout a little, tweaking it and pushing and pulling a little bit to make sure that there's enough room for word counts and things like that. Tweaking we're looking at colors, and maybe as you navigate through decades, the color changes. So we bring out some of those colors from the building. What else is in here? Yep. So it's a good example of this is like, you move from the 1990s to 2000s and then the color change. So a really nice subtle hint, but the layouts are still pretty much the same. A lot of it will move around depending on what images we get, aspect ratios and things like that, but there's enough room for the stories that we want to tell. So it's in a pretty solid spot visually, I think, and it feels like it belongs in the space, and with the panel next to it, it's going to look really nice. I think we lost the room.
Yeah, it looks like we did, isn't it? I guess they're taking a break. All right, well, I can use a break.
Sounds good.
I saw production. I'm sure we got to that part.
All right.
Really?
Are we on?
Are you really sad or what? Are you just
check
being?
with everyone on the far end if they can.
Nigel, can you hear us?
Oh, just.
You're on mute.
Yes, yeah.
After we should be good then.
I don't see.
This is Trey. I can hear you guys.
Thank you. All right, I feel like someone was in the middle of the sentence, a sentence on the foundations of progress timeline. So let's go back there.
Thanks for sticking it through to us.
Okay, so we were starting to talk about the different stories that we're going to be in here, and these are actually stories that you have previously approved. So content is being written now around each decade. It will have a primary story regarding the Capitol, and secondaries, 1 to 2 different secondary stories, and then we'll have a tertiary fact. And that fact is to help connect you to an event that happened, a world event that happened that would be pretty common knowledge so that you can connect when this was all happening. So since we took a walk, I will let you guys read this on your own. We'll be sending this if you don't already have it, the deck. But again, these are stories that have been previously approved. And so we're currently writing the content on that. And text templates will be on their way for review and approval. So that was Foundations of Progress timeline. Any questions on that before we move into civics? So, okay. It's a quiet group today.
This might be a good time to bring up Rachel, and I think this will be sort of a theme, but a lot of this, and this is the, Foundations of Progress is a great example where we all are aware we could be facing a lull in the committee. We hope to get legislative members appointed right away. We are not in control of that decision, so it could be a while. And I think the part of our purpose today is saying, yes, that looks good, absent us saying anything different. Keep on keeping on those topics. I think that's our big message today.
Perfect. We are full steam ahead unless we hear somebody tell us to slow down our horses. Those are 2 different analogies, I know, but
that's a lot of analogies.
It's an agriculture story. And
I also want to note that I have learned a lot of new vocabulary throughout this project, and today's are alidade and plumb bob, neither of which.
Yep.
But I do know.
He's not the one that wears the square pants.
Different Bob.
So
totally different Bob.
I really appreciate the co-chairman, and that is a little bit of the unknown. I don't anticipate that if dramatic changes are made, which I don't necessarily anticipate that either. But I think that I think we can feel pretty good about staying the course and going forward, and with the support of this subcommittee, hopefully whoever is seated next will charge ahead.
Well, and I think recognizing just to kind of keep balls in the air, we don't want to drop months of time where you guys can't be productive because of us.
Right. So.
Yeah, and a lot of that work and decision making has happened. So there will be time periods where we do kind of disappear for a little bit to get big chunks done on the different packages. So timing might be actually okay. So.
Okay.
By the way, kudos. I enjoyed our little walkthrough. For those who couldn't join us, we were in the Hirschler building taking a look at some of those entryways and the elevator signage and all of that stuff. Boy, thumbs up. It really looks terrific. Very impressed.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, we will move into civics. And in our last discussion, I believe we gave you guys an indicator of where we were headed. And our big theme is really simplification. And we've worked really hard to get to content outline at, at a high level that we feel like really hits on the main points that we want to get across. We do want to make sure that we are being clear in what we're trying to communicate here. And so you hear us continue to use this theme of what is the one thing. So if there is only one thing that everybody walks away with coming out of the civics lab, we want them to know that this is their government and that the most important title is citizen. We've tried to ensure that this entire place feels like it's open. This is the people's house. They are able to come in. We want to make sure that we connect that with this is an open democracy. We want you, we need you to make sure that this works. We need that participation. So you'll see that theme continue to drive through. We're going to walk you through what those high-level messages are and then how we see that programming come to life within the civics lab. And looking at the end-to-end journey of those students includes this Capitol classroom as well as their walk from the bus to here. So we're going to walk you through that entire path, what the messaging looks like, and how we're going to move that forward. Nigel, do you want to kick us off talking about the student entry path?
Sure, yeah. And I remember to unmute myself. So, hey, one thing, if you notice the tertiary facts in that from the timeline thing, one of them was the Wright brothers first flight, and that was today, 121 years ago. Today's the anniversary. Okay, that's fascinating to me.
More people flying today than there were back then.
Okay, Nigel, we can only handle 3 new facts today, and you've done it.
Okay, so we've got students getting off the bus and they're walking towards the building, and instead of going into the exciting Capitol structure that's in front of them, they tail off and head into the lobby of their accountant's office. So we want to get them eager and excited about the experience that they're anticipating. So the goal is to welcome them and to pique that curiosity. So they walk through those doors, and the first thing they have to do is go down the stairwell towards where the Capitol classroom is. So we're going to put wall graphics on those walls in that stairwell with a welcome to the Capitol Square FCOs halfway down on the landing as they're going down. So that it all of a sudden enriches that experience and changes the stairwell from this sort of drab place into something that's engaging and starts to pique their interest, just as we hope to. After they go down the stairwell, then they turn the corner and go down the hallway. You probably all walked down this morning towards the classroom. So we have a wall graphic on both sides, and on one side it says, "Welcome to the People's House." So we've transitioned from a structure and institution to your house as you move down this wall with a sky view of the Capitol and the Herschel building. So it connects those 2 buildings together. And then they finally turn the corner at the bottom of at the end of this hallway into the Capitol classroom after they've dumped their stuff in the cubby holes. And they're surrounded by the 4 sisters on walls in a 3-dimensional world. So it kind of emerges in that space. And then they're told the most important job in this building is citizen. So it really sets the stage for the experience and expectations that they can have in this space, and it enriches whatever happens here and elevates it beyond a standard kind of conference room environment, which I think is a great setup for what comes next.
I will say, I'm going to pause here for a quick second to just appreciate Representative Sherwood's reactions. I love watching your reactions. I hope you never play poker, or if you do, play with me with lots of money. But that is exactly the reaction we were hoping for. Wendy had a little bit of that as well. Love seeing this reaction. It is quite the difference from the blank walls that we are sitting in here looking at now to this really immersive. You are in the Capitol. You are part of this. Really proud of the creatives' efforts and everything. And as you see new things, you get that excitement going again. So thank you for those reactions. That makes my heart very happy.
Hey, this 4 sisters thing was Wendy's idea. She brought this up as we were contemplating what to put on these walls, and I think it's fantastic. So I'm happy with the way this is landing. But, all right.
Okay, sorry to call you out, Representative Sherwood, but it made me very happy to watch it. Okay, so then we move into the civics lab. Maybe set this up, Nigel, how the room is set up and how we're going to move through.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to set up how we got to this place. I mean, we started yay these many moons ago with design first sort of strategy. And that was a bad idea because we took those designs of these great experiences and then we had to shoehorn in the story. And that's never going to work right. So we went back to school and started to understand what the story really was about, and then developed this really strong outline that simplified and focused the content so that now we can show that it all connects to the Constitution, that it connects to the citizens and their ability to take action. And the way we do that is by bringing them to this central station, which serves as a conduit for the rest of the experience and reminds the students and other visitors that the core to this whole thing is you, the citizen, and the Constitution. We outline that by indicating the particular articles that relate to the different branches and other things within the experience in this space. So they start there, they're dispersed into groups, and they go to these different walls. And as you go into that double door, on your left is the how to get involved, which really drives at what you as a person can do within the conduits of government. The legislative branch, which spells out its role and how you can relate to that. The executive branch, which spells out its role and how you can relate to that in the different agencies. It jumps over and we combine judicial branch and checks and balances on one wall because we don't want to spend too much time on judicial branch since there's such a rich experience just down the street. And then we finish off with checks and balances, which is the critical component that makes all these things balance and work together. So let's move into the different spaces. And we're going to start with the central station. And on each one of these, I'm going to demonstrate what the one thing is for that central station. We have this overall one thing that Rachel reminded us of, but each one of these stations needs to have what is the core thing we want to get across. And the one thing for the central station is that the Constitution is the foundation of Wyoming government. We, the people, are at the center. And that's based on Article 1. So that's where the citizen journey starts with the Constitution. And we spell that. I'm not going to read all these details. You'll be able to dig into this as this is uploaded. So I'm just going to start at a cursory level, unless you ask me to go in a little deeper. And then Article 2 talks about the different departments, different branches. So these are the stations on this journey. It's sort of the experience kickoff for the room. And we have the citizen station, the checks and balance station, the legislative station, the executive station, the judicial station, all related to different articles, and all great ways, each one of them a great way to start the experience as long as you then continue to move around the room. This is also where we kick off the passport, which is that takeaway element that the student or visitor will be able to grab and personalize as they move through the experience and take that home with them to remember the experience and talk to their parents or friends about it. So we start next. What we're going to do with each one of these is start by showing you kind of a rough content mapping elevation for each of these spaces. These are not meant to be designs. It's meant to communicate what content's going to live in that space and how it's sort of the hierarchy of that content. So it starts with that experience overview, which will be on a screen, and then it breaks down the 5 different branches, and that sets you off to go to those different branches or different stations, as we're calling them. And it's also where you pick up the passport. On the reverse side, that same constitutional interactive that Emilio was walking through us through earlier, that's going to be in the Historic Supreme Court. We're taking the screen part of that and placing that on that wall, so the richness of that experience is available to them here as well. After that, they'll be distributed to the different stations. So perhaps you're the one that got started on how to get involved, that how to get involved station. The one thing there is you are the most important part of the government. You are impacted by your government. You can impact your government. And that's driving from Article 1, the Declaration of Rights. Each one of these stations, you'll notice that we've kind of broken it down into four categories of content, so that people get the sense of the cadence of the story that they're reading. And as they move from place to place, it's always built around the same framework. It won't look regimented. It'll flex, and some things will have emphasis on the what, and some will emphasize the how. But there's always going to be a why or who. There's always going to be a what. There's always going to be a how, and there's always going to be that passport, which is always connected, which is always related to the how, what you can do as a citizen, as a part of this story yourself. So those are the four points of contact on the wall. And if we look at how that's broken down on the wall, you get to see the emphasis with who and what being smaller than how in this instance, because the how of this story, the things that you can do to be involved in the government is the richest part of this story in this instance. So that's got more space. You'll also notice across the top that gray bar, and these are all shown in sort of grays and muted colors so that we don't focus too much on the design. We focus more on how the content's distributed and organized. But that line across it's a bit like how does a law become a bill, but it's a lot more than that. It talks about the wants and needs of the populace, the ideas and the bills that comes from those wants and needs, and the laws and the community that those things create. And it follows it all the way through the legislative process, the executive agencies, the judicial process, and starting all the way back to the person that first raised their hand and said, what if we did this, or can we stop doing that? So that gray bar you'll see on each one of these, it continues all the way around in a secular effort, because you know once a law is made, it doesn't mean that's where it stops. Otherwise, we'd be still under prohibition. So there's always that cycle of change, and as the populace sort of reacts to, and individuals react to the way government is successful or not. We next move into the next station, which is the legislative branch. And the one thing there is that we want people to understand the legislative branch makes laws. Article 3 establishes that. So we start with the what and the who. The who is an interesting story because of the citizen legislative reality within that body. And next we talk about the how they do that job. This is where we can start to break into committees and the lawmaking process and all those different details. And then finally, the role of the citizen. And we always break that down into three components as well. We talk about how people can connect, reach out to different people, to legislators, and ask questions and ideas. We talk about what they can do with their voice, speaking up and participating in meetings, and then always about voting. That's one of your greatest powers. Don't let that slip by as a way to be involved. So that's the legislative branch. I want you guys to dig deep into those outlines. It really captures the story well when you're reviewing this. So we're just going over this. Am I going too fast? Does anyone have any questions as I'm moving forward, the way this is structured? Is this making sense to everyone?
Doing okay. Anybody jump in if you have something?
Are we good, committee? You good? Everybody's shaking their head. Yes, we're good.
Awesome, fantastic. So the legislative branch takes a longer wall. It's one of the longest walls in the room. There's a big story to tell here. There's different ways that we can be involved. There's complex stories to understand about how things are processed through the legislative and committee process. We always start with what they do, and we always indicate what article and how this is born out of the Constitution at the top. We talk about the people and the how, and then the role of you as a citizen. That's always the same sort of framework. And that gray bar continues across the top to show that process. Next, we get into the executive branch. And the one thing there is the executive branch gets to make the laws happen and make sure people follow the laws. And that's established by Article 4. Again, the what talks about the executive branch and all that entails. It's not just excuse me, the who on that is not just the governor. It's also the four statewide officials and especially all the citizens that are deeply involved in executing the role of the executive branch across the state. And then the how do they do their job is a little more complex in this instance because it's not necessarily the same for all different agencies. So we want to show that how the how varies from agency to agency, from law to law, in an overview sense. We don't want to get too detailed, but we do want them to understand that changes depending on what avenue we're talking about. Finally, again, we finish with the role of the citizen and connecting and speaking and working and voting across there. And that's how that kind of fleshes out. It's a shorter wall there, but we think it's it's a sufficient space to tell that story. Again, we reiterate the article on that first panel on the what they do. The who and how kind of tail together more because of how the particular agency is reflected in different forms of how they execute their role. And then we finish on the column bump out there with the role of the citizen and the passport sign off. And then we turn to our right where our two friends are standing and we look at the judicial branch. And that's the first of two areas on that third wall. The one thing for the judicial branch is the judicial branch interprets the law excuse me. I've got a repeat of judicial branch station there. I don't know why. And that's based on Article 5 in there. Again, we explore the what, who, and how, and the role of the citizen. And there'll be reminders here that they can get a richer, more complex experience over at the Supreme Court in the Judicial Learning Center down the street. On that same wall, just further down towards the entry doors, is the checks and balances and separation of powers station. The one thing there is 3 branches were created in order to share power, so no branch is too powerful. The Article 2 establishes these departments, and then the wall breaks down the separation of powers, the checks and balances, and the role of the citizen, and finally, again, the passport sign off in that station. And that's how that's kind of spelled out in the on that wall. So on the left we have the judicial branch, on the right we have checks and balances. The article, the relevant article of the Constitution is included where it's appropriate, and we still break it down into the what, who, and how for the judicial branch. It's a little different for checks and balances because it's a different sort of concept that we're trying to communicate there. So we're not following that exact same format. But we still finish off with the role of the citizen and the passport that you can emboss to remember your visit. Any questions? No, everybody perfectly understands everything.
Found them into silence. Madam Chair, I would say just listening to Nigel present, I think it's incredible the amount of learning DI has done and has really, you can all just be very proud of what knowledge you've gained. And we had that help also with our We the People Project Citizen Partners, and CSL helped with some of those efforts. And then our Department of Education staff aren't here today, but Department of Education has been heavily involved in making sure all of this civic learning correlates to the state standards.
And Wendy's been our honorary dean. So as they finish that experience and we head them out into the world, we wanted to leave with some sort of message. And this is obviously in development, but something like the most important job in this building is citizen, just to remind them that the what you can do and how can you can take a part is just as critical as all the other things you just learned in this space. And that kind of outlines the experience. I think we talk a bit about a little more detail about the passport. I can't remember what's on the next. Oh, no. I got to share this with you. Good grief. That panel on the left is a representation of all the interpretive panels that you're seeing throughout the Capitol. And we wanted what happens inside this room to sort of emulate that, but notch it up a couple of or decades to the audience with the shorter attention span and need for more engagement. So we've made some adjustments. We're using a lot of the same color palette, but we're pushing out some of the graphics. So now we're introducing infographics, and the images are a little more contemporary and they punch off the page a little more. The stories are shorter and faster because of the attention spans, but we're even playing with the same sort of configuration for icons, but just repurpose them for the who, what, why part of our story here. Looking at typography so that it's even more accessible to our audience, where we're using this sort of block serif face for headlines and sans serif face for the body copy. So this is an example of the kind of moves we're going to make. Don't imagine that the wall is just going to be full of a bunch of these panels. I think these might be kind of the lead-in panels for each wall, and then we'll add some interest and variation as we move through. And then obviously there's going to be a role for interactives, both analog and digital, that'll enrich various components of the story as we understand what best leads, what story parts of the story best lends themselves to those types of interactions. And then finally,
I'll just jump in real quick, Madam President, Mr.
yeah, go for it.
So, which is still in development. The next stage for us is to take this design idea and this design vocabulary and push it into the very simple elevations that you just saw on the previous pages. The idea is to merge all of this together so you do not feel like you are, like what Nigel said, where it's not going to be a series of panels that you just walk from panel to panel. It's to merge all this together into one cohesive and collective thought. We do also want it to very much feel like it's part of the Capitol. And again, you've said this before, co-chairs, trust the work that we've done. So the work that we've done on the panels, the design that we've done and the color palette, et cetera, we want to make sure that we are staying true to that. But as Nigel said, is that we want to update it a little bit for our new and different users. So that's where we're going to take some design cues and we're going to implement them in the civics lab, so that the idea is that we want it to feel like it's part of the Capitol, but have its own vibe and its own feeling, and it needs to be a little bit different because of the subject matter difference in the audience, but also that we were very mindful of not having it be so far out there that it feels like it was a second thought. So finding and merging and finding that balance is what's the next step for us. But we have a tremendous backbone that we're not showing today with detail into any and all of this, that we will start to implement this, and the idea of go forth. That's where we are going to go next with all of this, is that all of this merged together into what we will now call the civics lab. So hopefully that makes sense.
Madam Chairman, that makes a lot of sense to me, and it's well described. Thank you. I'm excited. I really like this. I think it's on the right track.
Me too, and I think it was good. I was struggling to get my arms around the first iteration of the civics lab, and this feels good. I would say feels like we're on, I can picture this more and really can tie it into the whole building. So, forward.
Yeah, I think it's terrific. I'm really proud of the fact that we have tied this piece and other pieces into our the education of our kids who come to visit the Capitals. Where salute to the department for being here all along. So yeah, it's exciting. That's pretty cool. I love carrying, some of these panels into the civics lab. I never thought about that, but it ties the entire Capitol building together. So a big salute there. Committee, I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Anybody have any additional thoughts? Or Mr. Garrett, are we on the right track?
It's not for me to say, Mr. I appreciate it.
Just a couple more final touches that I think Nigel was going to walk through in terms of the rooms.
Yeah, it's got that the same ceiling. I think it's in the room you're sitting in right now. It's got that dropped white tile ceiling, which is less than stellar. So we thought sort of these faux metal ceiling tiles would make, which Representative Sherwood is modeling for us today, would be a great way to sort of bring a bit of the character of the Capitol into that room, as well as looking at different carpet options. And these are just some references for all the different carpets that are in the Capitol right now. not necessarily something just like this, but that would start to influence our approach. And we could even include maybe some architectural elements. And here's some sort of faux columns and that might work as an element within the room as we incorporate more of the look of the Capitol into that space, so it feels that much more immersive. We'd also be using wall graphics on the walls as well to sort of even further enrich the experience.
So I have just to really quickly, Nigel. I only discovered a couple of years ago, and I've been around down here for a while, but I never paid attention to the carpeting. And I was told why it's blue in the House of Representatives and it's maroon in the Senate chamber. And I just didn't realize why that was.
Why is that?
The House of Commons is the House of Representatives. The House of Lords is the Senate. And there you have it. So blue carpeting in one and the maroon carpeting in another. So anyway, so carpeting matters. So I appreciate yeah, Nigel, thank you.
Well said, Lord Lennon.
Yeah, there you go. I set that up and you just spiked it.
We better mute him.
Hey, thanks so much to the core team for investing in DI's education on this. It's really helped us to get to a much better place. So we appreciate that, and we're excited about the spot we've landed and where we're headed next with this space. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think this has ever happened since I've been coming to these meetings, but we added a topic, had an internet outage, and we're 3 minutes ahead of schedule. So.
Pretty awesome.
I'll zip it so you guys can keep going on schedule.
Maybe just a reminder, please speak up if there's anything that, that presents a bump in the road in any way. That's kind of the purpose of today is, let's make sure we're pointed in the right direction. It looks like we are. And feel good, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Wendy, package 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've talked about this for a couple meetings about as your committee has done work over the last few years, there have been different items that have come up that you've been interested in. I'm not sure if Treasurer Meyer is on the line still, but he mentioned the idea of a couple more videos of stories, perhaps of some of Wyoming's early frontier adventure explorers. Is that the word we're using? Explorers. There have been some original scope. If you go back clear to 2021, you had original scope of doing a tour booklet, a tour website, some activity booklets for kids, some of these conference room spaces, the photographs, the framed and matted photographs that DI has done in the meeting rooms have been tremendously popular. You originally in 2021 had talked about other spaces for those as you went through the project. With your current scope and budget, there have been questions about could we add this or that here. So as this subcommittee, as duly constituted, wraps up its work, the question, and I may turn this over to Brandon too, is there have been discussions about whether or not any other funds that may be available through the state construction department could be applied to some of those scope items that were originally contemplative and that have been discussed over time. And so I think as the contracting and fiscal agent, the construction management division has just looked to you, even though your body is only a recommendation authority, they have the authority to enter in if funds are available into contracts and change orders, but typically look for direction from you. So we don't know where we're at right now, but I think as a staff, there's probably interest in knowing if that is something, if there are funds available, if you would like us to continue to put pen to paper and see what that looks like, and if there are funds available for that work.
Anything to add, Brandon?
No, Wendy said it perfectly, and I think that's more the direction that we're looking for is if that is an appetite of this committee that will continue down that road and look for those opportunities to include a package 5.
I for one would love that. I think anything that we can do to you know, to reclaim any of that scope that Wendy talked about, I would sure be interested in that. But yeah,
I think I would agree, and even if there is not funding available, I know with this upcoming session too, you know, we're going to be, well, aren't getting questions, you know, well, aren't you going to do this? Or it sure would be nice to do this. And I think having some idea of those costs and availabilities is going to be important to be able to say, yes, we would have loved to do that, but we didn't have that funding, you know, that sort of thing. So I think that will be useful to keep on the back burner, but on a burner.
sure. And that's a good point, Madam Chairman. Really, some of that is we'll be able to say that was actually considered. We had to set that aside because of cost factors and, you know, inflationary or whatever. And so by all means, I think any investigation you and your colleagues can do, Brandon, would be outstanding. That would be terrific. The committee, does that sound like something that we want to encourage to push forward? Okay.
Sorry, Representative Sherwood.
Thanks. I apologize for my inconsistency in hand raising or not. So yes, I am in favor of this. And I also need a reminder of what we've set aside for repair or maintenance of the work that we are doing. And Wendy, if it's easier to answer offline, that's fine. I'm just not recalling if we've already appropriated a pot of money that, say, in 10 years something breaks, that we pull funds out of that account to do any maintenance or repairs of the exhibits. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, Representative Sherwood, right now, and I might look to Nick to make sure I have this accurate, there is a year, I believe, of a maintenance, either a year or biennium of a maintenance and service agreement that were funded as part of this package of packages 1 through 4. Anything beyond that is not funded. With this committee's transition, or I should say taking on the additional role of the governance subcommittee for Capitol Square, that does include oversight of things like exhibits and artwork and furnishings and events and visitor services are the types of things contemplated in that governance work under statute 9-5-106 E and F. That also references the Capitol Square preservation account, which you might recall Joint Appropriations Committee established that account and basically closed out what had been the Capitol Square rehabilitation and restoration account. So Capitol Square preservation account is kind of what the funding mechanism is for work here. So far, the funds that Joint Appropriations Committee has put in that account have been very targeted for specific activities. So that would certainly be the location where if there was a desire to put money in for, say, refreshing content or repairing exhibits past the warranty date, that would likely be a vehicle you could use to do that.
Yeah, if there's anything to add too, it's just we would have our standard 1-year warranty and all the product we fabricated. The technology components will have a service agreement for the first year that's already included in the package. And that year will start when they're finished and installed, not when we started the design.
Any other questions, concerns on package 5 or the potential therefore? All right. Draft curation policies with Nate.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I want to start off by acknowledging the work of Kevin and Wendy, certainly in initiating these, and well over a year ago. Really looking especially at the Capitol Complex Art Memorial, Interpretive Exhibits, Displays, and Historic Significance Management Policy, which these draft policies take into account. Of course, the State Museum Collections Management Policy, Capital Art Program Policy, and the State Building Commission considerations. Over the past 3 months, as of yesterday, I've had a chance to really go through the various iterations of these policies and look at edits and comments. And so really, I just had a few very minor edits. Kevin and I had an opportunity to walk through the most recent draft, which I believe you all saw about a year ago. And we really just had just a few very minor edits, one addition. And I am certainly comfortable with where these are at and excited for input. So just kind of a high level overview, make sure I'm looking at the right one. This really just goes over a scope of the policy, kind of a general background, identifying that this policy governs artwork, artifacts, exhibits, memorials, plaques, and statuary in common areas of the Capitol Extension, and Capitol grounds, and then discusses common areas, including lobbies, halls, meeting rooms, and other areas generally accessible by the public. So that's the big picture. It goes through and looks at permanent displays, all of the work of the tremendous work of this subcommittee. It looks at new displays, just a high level of that process. It looks at the intent of temporary displays, goes through looking at standards and guidelines, and that's really where the State Museum's collection management policy is a strong, prominent piece. Looks specifically at the Capitol Gallery and specific my role with that, and just acknowledges those other policies. So the idea that this supersedes that long name Capitol Complex Art Memorial, Interpretive Exhibits, Displays, and Historic Significance Management Policy incorporates all of the museum policies, and then also acknowledges the temporary art rotations through CAPA, through the offices of the elected officials. So very short, 3-page document, but just provides that high level. The idea then that this would be further supported and support the user's guide for all of the work that DI has done, which I think we would incorporate the idea of movement of those pieces, the intention of where they go when, identifying some of those locations and such. So quick update, but like I said, we'll send that out, and I look forward to updates. And as far as process beyond that, it's my understanding, and certainly, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, correct me if you have other thoughts, that this would then kind of go under the museum policies. So it would have review by Director Glenn, review by AG as necessary. And so ultimately, yeah, just looking for the subcommittee's blessing and edits and ultimate blessing on the policy.
Great. I think we look forward to seeing it. And
so, Madam Chairman, I'm just glad you're here, Nathan. That's a big step that was recommended by our subcommittee, and you're here. And if you like it, we love it. I think you're right. That rests where it should, and that's in your department, division, and agency. And you might recall, committee, I think we're always going to have suggestions and offers and things come along where people, they do love this place and they want things to be involved with it. And that's going to be a challenge ongoing. don't you think, Nathan? I just think people are always going to come forward and want to be a part of the state capitol, and we've got something we want to give you, and it can be hung right there on that wall, maybe. And thankfully, we've got a document now that covers those sorts of things, right?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I completely agree, and it's wonderful to have that ownership, that public ownership of the building and the interest in the building, and having these policies have something specific to point to, acknowledging that things of temporary or permanent nature go through the museum and its collection policy and its collections and acquisitions committee, acknowledging SBC and temporary permits. So having that document is a huge piece for me, a piece of paper to point to.
Representative Sherwood.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan, so much for working on this. And I know that it is in good hands, just based on past interactions with you and the work that you've accomplished throughout the state. Thank you for that. I think one thing that's always challenging when you think about accepting a gift, accepting an artifact or a piece of artwork, is the long-term maintenance. So here I am going back to like, these gifts aren't always free. There's conservation costs, and storage costs, care costs. And so do we have in that policy, or a really gentle, polite way of saying, we're enthused to get this gift, would you consider a financial contribution to go along with it for its long-term care?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood. So I need to look through. I don't recall that being in here specifically, but in reviewing for that, I will look into our collections management policy as well, and see what the reference is there. I completely agree. It's certainly something we account for in the APB, the Art in Public Buildings, but on a, I don't want to say smaller scale, but specific to smaller things that isn't statutory. It's associated with new construction. Something good to consider. So yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I'm smiling because the representative asked a question appropriate as an appropriator. She's become an appropriations committee member for this past several years, and reappointed, by the way, and I'm so happy about that. So thanks, Representative.
Madam Chair, I guess kind of Nathan's note about sending this to you for your review. We will also send you as kind of for this committee, one last set of homework prior to the end of your term of kind of doing a final file stage review of what DI presented today. It's kind of their ability to tie a bow around it so they can proceed. And we'll also send the curation policy kind of all right, this is as this committee is formed and the work you've done, if there's anything else you would like to see before the State Museum takes that through their process, that'll be sent to you as well.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for the offer of any input that we would have at this point. I don't anticipate that there will be much because lots of work's been done on it. Madam Co-Chairman.
No, I agree.
Madam Chair, I would say one more thing, just as you listen to Nathan, his position was the recommendation of this subcommittee, and you did a lot of behind the scenes lifting on that. Seeing that with the curation policies and the work that DI is doing, I think the work of your committee is starting to really come to fruition. If you look back at 2021, where you were and where you are today at the end of 2024.
Thank you, Wendy. I agree. It's kind of amazing, as you plant trees as you go along, and then you manage to get up on the ridge and you look back and you've got quite a little grove of trees. So it's a pretty neat thing. So we'll look forward to that read.
All right, so we are 15 minutes ahead. The 1 p.m. acoustics update is a little tough because I'm guessing maybe at this point we probably can't bump them up. I wouldn't think. But should we go ahead and talk about the broadcast studio, et cetera, perhaps, while we have a few minutes?
Want them in?
What's your, or if anybody, or if there's other agenda suggestions, I'm happy to entertain them.
I think if we started with the acoustics, it's gonna take longer than our 15, and probably to get them set up and everything else would be.
Right, that's what I,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe we'll go ahead and do all the rest of our business that we need to and leave that for after lunch.
And Madam Chair, I think we could do kind of an update on broadcast studio, Capitol Gallery, and custodial break room, and then just leave whatever trainer wants to present specific to the broadcast studio.
What were you gonna say?
We could take public comment too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do all 11, 12, and 13, and then break for lunch.
Sounds good.
All right. So broadcast studio, Capitol Gallery, and custodial break room build out update.
I'll lead off, and then I'll turn it over to Brandon, because he's been working specifically with various consultants on this piece. But you may recall that this is work that was statutorily assigned to your committee. This was kind of the start of looking at your role in governance within Capitol Square. And so just briefly at a high level, the broadcast studio includes kind of two scopes of work. One is enlarging the space. And the second, which trainer will be leading on, is really the trainer's leading on both pieces. But one is making a larger studio space by taking part of the media room, and that'll be fine for the level of usage that space gets. And then it's really a fit up to make it appropriate as a broadcast quality studio. So there's some acoustical remedies to basically block noises in the building. It's adjacent to an elevator room. And then to basically set it up with cameras and camera lights and proper acoustic material to truly make that a space that can be reserved. It can be reserved if the governor wants to do news conferences in there, and would have the right types of sound systems. If broadcasters want to use the space to do an interview, if agencies want to have news conferences in there. PBS, as you know, does a weekly show during session. That would be the space that they would reserve for that during session. So there's money appropriated for that project, as well as the Capitol Gallery to take that space and truly turn it into proper lighting for an art and exhibit gallery, some modifications to the area to make it appropriate for that type of space, as well as building out of some millwork pedestals that look appropriate to that space that Nathan will be able to use with different sizes for different shows. Building out some storage space within somewhere we're still looking, that's part of that scope. And then this was just kind of a small tag on, but our custodial staff who do so much down in this area are sometimes during session, you know, the spaces they normally are in the interim, they end up not really having a home during session because the catering kitchen's in use, all the conference rooms are in use. And they also have some need for some storage in a space like that. And that just got tagged on as part of that appropriation. And that is work that your subcommittee will oversee. Brandon through CMD has already done some work with various architects about what that looks like. And so I think our ask again is, as your committee is wrapping up its work, is CMD is proceeding with design, but just that we continue to do that work so that hopefully by the end of session, we would be ready to roll with actually implementing the design.
And that, Madam Chairman, committee, just kind of an update of where we're at with those, and just, and I'll start with the broadcast studio. There's lots of trials in that room that trainer has begun to problem solve how they're going to work through those. We've got some HVAC issues. Like Wendy indicated, we've got some noise issues that we're trying to eliminate in that room. Today, I don't think you'll see trainer go into a lot of those details. They're still investigating. But you'll see kind of a rough floor plan of what we're thinking in that area and what that space will become. So they're beginning down that road of how they're going to solve those issues. and getting the right consultants on board for equipment spec out and things of that nature. Hopping over to the gallery and the concession, Plan One Architects is the firm that's on board to do that work. They have been in and done their initial study. They do have, I believe, a 35% document that we're going to pull in specific departments and people to sit down and review that after the first of the year. And hopefully the next time we meet, we'll have a pretty good document of what we're doing there to present to the committee. And as right now, I think that's where we're at, and would field any questions or thoughts with those.
So, Madam Chairman, Brandon, who is that architectural team?
Plan One Architects.
Madam Chairman, just a quick comment on, and most people who know me know my early career was in the media, and you know, all three phases. And I'm really pleased at the support we received from the Appropriations Committee and from the executive branch. This subcommittee, I think, has championed the idea that we wanted to do something with that area. I'm talking specifically about the broadcast studio. I think it's not only appropriate, but it's exciting for me that we can tip our hat to a very important part of the process that goes on in this building, and that's the media. That's a very important thing, and so it just warms my heart that we're going to have a space where we can take very good care of those members of the media, Chairman. Exciting.
Mr. Co-Chair, I sense future need for another policy on use. Probably.
So the Capitol Gallery piece, Wendy, I think you touched on it. That it goes without saying that I think I speak for the subcommittee. We want to make sure that we give you the tools, Nathan, to finish that properly. It's a concept that was born out of DI and the committee working together, and boy, we came up with something I think is really going to be terrific. But so that when we talk about columns or pedestals, those will fit in, right? I mean, they'll be the appropriate things. Could you speak to that for just whatever?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Yes. And I think that's really a critical piece. As I voiced yesterday, as I've been working on this, what will be my first exhibit that was planned before me, going into that space, using what we have that we typically use in the museum that is typically used over here for the Governor's Capital Art Exhibition. It will work. But in the long run, we want something that looks right. And so not only that looks right, but that is museum quality, so that we're not worried about, off-gassing and affecting or creating microclimates, affecting the objects that are then stored or exhibited on top of those in the vitrines. So taking that into account, Wendy mentioned lighting, taking that into account, make sure that we're aware of the lumens so that we're not light damaging objects in that space. Yeah, just using that space as best we can.
Anything else on that? Public comment.
No pressure, but all eyes on you.
For a moment, I thought maybe you were going to say anything.
You're exactly right. There's going to be a likely need to address a policy that talks about how to reserve that room. This is something that committees have wrestled with, I know, but it would be, well, I think we can anticipate a lot of challenges to how media rooms are used, and certainly freedom of the press. First Amendment is crucial to this whole process, but it needs to be, in my view, employed respectfully and to the benefit of the greater good. And it's thin ice for sure. So big challenge. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Garrett, any other thoughts regarding the rest of the morning?
The rest of the morning?
Yeah, all that we talked about this morning, that we didn't offer public comment on each one of those categories of things. So this is kind of the chance for the whole morning, but.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I really appreciate that. As always, your work is just extraordinary. The level of detail that you go into and the fair exchange of ideas, and using that word again, the respect that you all have for this building, its exhibits, its processes for allowing people to move about and understand our history and contribute to our history. It's just extraordinary to me. I appreciate you all so much. So that would be my own.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other public comment? Assuming there's no one online. Other meetings, we can't do adjournment yet, but other meetings, I think we know after this meeting will be anxiously awaiting appointment by the legislature. Traditionally, that is done after session. I think we've put out some feelers and some asks, recognizing that this project continues to go, and having a committee would be good, and not having to take a 2-month break would also be good. So we no word on that as far as I know, but we'll keep everyone apprised. And I mean, with that, I don't know, we don't have any meetings scheduled currently, so we'll be in a little bit of a hurry up and wait for a few months. So.
And Madam Chair, on that note, typically during session, it's difficult to get a meeting like this, even for half a day. Yeah. But if we can get a committee appointed, there may be some times, I think we did this last couple sessions, where we might have like an hour over noon recess or an hour prior to convening. If there's some things that DI just needs to check in with you on, or if there's a committee appointed and we don't meet, there may still be not so much deep reviews coming your way, but kind of a absent objection type of request.
So, committee, just to add to the co-chairman's thoughts, I've sent out a little message to our leaders and explained the situation with a little bit different kind of committee that exists to do this work, and hopefully we'll hear back soon, and then we can continue and get all the work done. But I'm hopeful that they will jump on this sooner rather than later. We certainly don't want to wait until March to continue the work that we've all been doing. So, yeah.
Okay, so we have trainer on at 1. So I guess it is the hour to break for lunch. I'm assuming they'll be on right at 1.
They're here on site.
Oh, they're here on site. Okay. I should have known that. How's everybody feeling? Do we want to bump that up and get started 15-20 minutes earlier, or do we want a full hour for lunch? I don't have any where to go and no people to see, but I know that everyone else has miles to travel. So what's your all sense of?
On the legislative front, Madam Chairman, sometimes we charge through, but I don't want to shortchange our ability to get through all of the acoustical information that could take us into the afternoon a little bit. So to the committee, I'm happy to keep charging, to free up your afternoon a little bit more, or we can take a break and come back. What's the pleasure, committee?
I mean, what's trainers?
Staff, any concerns that you guys have? Do you have noon meetings that
Madam Chair, I think it'd be appropriate to break and come back at like 12:30.
Yeah, is that?
I can get them down here. They're up
Kind of
doing
split the
measurements and doing all kinds of stuff.
Everyone go back to your office and have some cookies because every office has cookies.
15.
If look, I have this membership and I'm anxious to get back home and get to this gym membership. Speaking of cookies. Yeah, so anyway, I may not have a cookie, but we'll take a break.
So let's tentatively plan to take a short break, go grab something to eat or walk around the block and reconvene at 12:30. Unless your office is on the Colorado border. No.
Going to break here.